Oh, hello, great readers. I'm Belchan.
I'm Nimakung.
And Chan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you. Chap. 14 sec, one of Jane Eyre, an autobiography.
Ah.
Oh.
Jane Eyre, an autobiography. Brontë. Chap. 14 sec 1. For several subsequent days I saw little of Mr. Rochester. In the mornings he seemed much engaged with business. And then, in the afternoon, gentlemen from Aloud or the neighbourhood called, and sometimes stayed to dine with him. When his brain was well enough to admit of horse exercise, he rode out a good deal, probably to return these visits, as he generally did not come back till late at night. During this interval, even Edel was seldom sent for to his presence, and all my acquaintance with him was confined to an occasional rencounter in the hall, on the stairs, or in the gallery, when he would sometimes pass me haughtily and coldly, just acknowledging my presence by a distant nod or a cool glance, and sometimes bow and smile with unmanlike affability. His changes of mood did not offend me, because I saw that I had nothing to do with their alternation. They ebb and flow depended on causes quite disconnected with me. One day he had company to dinner, and had sent for my portfolio, in order, doubtless, to exhibit its contents. The gentleman went wearily to attend a public meeting at Aloud, as Miss Fairfax informed me, but the night being wet and inclement, Mr. Rochester did not accompany them. The bell. A message came that I and Adel were to go downstairs. I brushed at Liz. Here I made her neat myself in my usual Quaker trim, close and plain, braided locks included, to admit of this arrangement descended, wondering whether the petit coffre was at length come for mistake. Its arrival had hitherto been delayed. She was gratified, stood a little carting on the table when we entered the dining room. Chair. Appeared to know it by instinct. Mawboyt, exclaimed she, running towards it. Yes, there is your own Boyd at last. A coroner, you genuine daughter of Paris, said the deep brother. Sarcastic voice of Mr. Rochester, depths of an immense easy-charita. By a set. And mind, he continued, bother me with any details of the anatomical process, condition of the entrails. Let your operation be conducted in silence, teens to tranquil. Infant Adel seemed scarcely to need the warning to suffer with her treasure, the lid having removed this impediment paper, she merely exclaimed, "O ciel," in ecstatic contemplation. Is Miss Eyre there? Now demanded the master, his seat to look. Ran to the door, near which I still stood. Ah, but come forward on. I am not fond of the prattle of children, he continued, for old bachelor as I am, lisp. A breath. Don't draw that chair farther off, Miss Eyre. Exactly where I placed it, if you please, that is. Confound these civilities. I continually forget them. More do I particularly affect simple mind. Old ladies. By the by, I must have mine in mind it. Won't do to neglect her, she is a Fairfax, or Widta. One he rang, an invitation to Miss Fairfax, who soon arrived, knitting basket in hand. Evening, Madam, I sent to you for a charitable purpose. Forbidden Adel to talk to me about her presence, repletion, have the goodness to serve her as auditors and interlocutor subtle indeed, no sooner saw my Fairfax. Suffer, and there quickly filled her lap with the porcelain, the ivory, the wax, and contents of her bite pouring out meantime. Such broken English as she was mistress of. A good host, pursued Mr. Rochester, amusing each other with pleasure. Miss Eyre, draw your chair still a little farther forward, or yet too far back, this comfortable chair. I did as I was bid, rather have remained somewhat in the shade, but Mr. Direct way of giving orders promptly. We were, as I have said, in the dining room. The lustre, which had been lit for dinner, of light there. The large fire was all red and clear, hung rich and ample before the lofty window and lofty arch. Everything was still, save the subdued chat of Adele. She dared not speak loud, and filling up each pause, the beating of winter rain against the panes. Mr. Rochester, as he sat in his damask-covered chair, had seen him look before. Not quite so much less gloomy, a smile on his lips, and his eyes sparkled not, I am not sure, but I think it very probable, was, in short, in his after-dinner mood more expanded and genial, also more self-indulgent than the frigid and rigid temper of the morning. He looked preciously grim chair, and receiving the light of the fire on his granite-hewn features, in his great dark eyes, for he had great dark eyes, and very fine eyes, turned without a certain change in their depth sometimes, which, if it was not softness, reminded you at least that feeling. He had been looking 2 minutes at the fire, been looking the same length of time at him, when, turning suddenly, he caught my gaze fastened on his physiognomy. You examine me. I should, if I had deliberated by something conventionally vague and polite, before I was worn out. They. My word. About you, said he, you have there of a little none it quaint, quiet, grave, and simple. You and your eyes generally bent on the carpet, except, by the by, they are directed personally to my face, just now, for instance, and when one asks your question, are obliged to reply. You rap out a rejoinder which, not blunt, is at least brusque. Sir, I was too plain. I beg your pardon. To give an impromptu, uncertain question about appearances. That tastes mostly differ, and that beauty is of little consequence. Such thing. Beauty of little consequence, indeed. And so, siphoning the previous outrage of stroking and soothing me into placidity. Stick a sly pink knife under my hair. Go on, find with me, pray. Mr. Rochester, first and sir. I intended no pointed repartee, so I think so. And you shall be answerable for it. Criticise me, the sable-webs of hair which lay horizontally over his brow, solid enough mass of intellectual organs of benevolence should have risen. Now, ma'am, far from it, sir. You would perhaps, there again. Another stick of the knife. She pretended to pat my head, not like the society of children and old women low be spoken. No. Young lady, I am not a general philanthropist, conscience, and he pointed to the prominences which are said to indicate that faculty, and which, fortunately for him, was sufficiently conspicuous, giving, indeed, a marked breadth to the upper part of his head, and besides, I once had a kind of rude tenderness of heart. Built as you, I was a feeling fellow and of partial to the unfudged, unfostered, unlucky, but fortune has knocked me about. Since has even kneed me with her knuckles, hard and tough as in India rubber ball, pervious though, or too still, and with one sentient point in the middle of the lump, a soap of white thought, and I did not know what answer to make to his queer question. How could I tell whether he was capable of being retransformed? Much puzzled. Miss Eyre, I am handsome, yes, Puzzled there becomes you, besides convenient, for it keeps those searching eyes of yours away from my physiognomy, and busies them with the worsted flowers of the rug, so Bazilan, and Lady with. This announcement he rose from his chair and stood, leaning his arm on the marble mantelpiece, plainly as well as his face, his unusual breadth of chest to his length of limb. An ugly man. Yet there was so much unconscious pride in his port, so much ease in his demeanour, own external appearance, so haughty a reliance on the power of other qualities, intrinsic or adventitious, to atone for the lack of mere personal attractiveness that, in looking at him, one inevitably shared indifference and, in a blind, imperfect sense, per faith in the confidence. To be gregarious and communicative tonight, he repeated. For you, the fire and the chandelier were not sufficient company for me. More would it have been, for none of these can talk a degree better, but still far below the mark, my fair Fixo. You, I am persuaded, can suit me. If you will, puzzled me the first evening I invited you down here. You since, other ideas have driven yours from my head, am resolved to be at ease, to dismiss what impotence pleases. Instead of speaking, I smiled, submissive smiley there. Speak, he urged. What about, whatever you like. Sat and said nothing of talking and showing off wrong person, I thought. You are dumb, I was dumb still. His head a little towards me, dive into my eyes. Stubborn, he said, and annoyed. Ah, consistent. I put my request in an absurd, almost insolent form. Eyre. I beg your pardon. The fact is, once for all, I don't wish to treat you like an inferior, that is correcting himself centuries advance in experience. This is legitimate at teens, as it would say, and it is by virtue of this superiority alone, little now, and divert my thoughts. He had deigned an explanation and an apology, and I did not feel insensible to his condescension, not seem so. I am willing to amuse you, if I can, willing, but I cannot introduce a topic will interest you. Ask me questions, then. In the first place, do you agree with me that I have a right to be a little masterful? To be continued.